Hi everyone, welcome back to GCon 360. My name is Dylan Press. I'm the guru here, so you may have seen a couple of my emails coming from the Guru newsletter. So our next presentation is on training users to train themselves, but before we jump into that, I just want to show you a couple slides, and then I'll turn it over to our presenter. So as I said before, this is GCon 360. And in case you missed the first session on Google Drive for Work from the Google Apps team, it was a really good one, but this intro you may have already seen. And so the Guru, we have 500 videos. We send a newsletter to 50,000 gurus every day. And if you want to join us, you can join at theguru.com/register to get daily tips and tricks and training and updates on Google Apps. And GCon 360 is our online free conference. So we've done GCons in the past, but GCon 360 is the next chapter in GCon. It's our biggest event series we've done yet. And we will have thousands of attendees and Google Apps customers. And this is number 2 of 15 different sessions that you guys should all tune into. And we'll be giving away t-shirts, Chromebooks, and Moto 360 watches and things like that. So keep an eye out for a form at the end of this hangout, and you guys can register to win some of those. So here's a list of some of the things you can win. We're giving away 6 Chromebook Pixels during our featured sessions. We're giving away GCon swag boxes, which include stickers and GCon t-shirts and some bonus items from a few of our sponsors. So as I said before, if you tune in to the end, there will be a form you can fill out in the Showcase app that you can submit, and that'll be your chance to win. I want to say a special thank you for this session, which is presented by GQs, which is a great collaborative task management application for Google Apps, so be sure to check them out. And without further ado, Training Users to Train Themselves by Andy Serwatuk. So I'll let Andy take it away now. Oh, and just one more thing. If you guys have any questions, there's a Q&A app. So to access that, go up to the apps grid at the top of your Hangout. It should look like 9 little boxes. And if you click into that and click into Q&A, you can ask questions throughout the session, and we will be answering them at the end of the session. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. So I'll turn it over to Andy now.
All right. Thanks, Dylan. First of all, thanks for letting me do this whole session. Thanks for asking me to do it. It's actually quite an honor. I've been a Google Apps fan for well, since it came out. I think I signed up for a Gmail box back in 2004. I thought a gig for a mailbox was just the craziest thing in the world, and I had to have it. Ever since then, I just kind of followed along with Google. So this session, just to give you a quick overview, basically I've been doing Google Apps for Google Apps administration for just over 6 years. When Dylan asked me to do this, the idea was Google's a bit of a different beast as far from your traditional mail systems and office suites. And it's new, and I mean, we've got an aging workforce, we have a younger workforce coming in. How do you make it all work? How do you sort of reach out to your end users was really what I interpreted to be where we wanted to take this. So a little bit of history about myself. Actually, Dylan, did you want me to throw up my presentation here? I'm not sure exactly what everyone's seeing right now, if they're just staring at me or if they're staring at my slides.
We're just staring at you right now. No slides.
All right, that's fine. I'll keep the slides as my cue cards then. There's not much in them.
Oh, no, please throw up the slides.
Throw up the slides? All right, give me a sec. Let me just share that out. Which one is it? Here we go. Share. All right. Everyone sees that now? Okay. So a little history about myself. I've been doing IT administration since I finished school. I went to Mohawk College. Graduated in '99, I think. Started out doing programming, kind of lost my flavor for sitting in front of a desk, and switched over to IT administration. Sort of networking and hardware was the program course. After that, worked for a very few short months with Hewlett Packard answering phones. That was a living hell. I'm sure anyone who works phones can appreciate that. From there, I moved on to I scored a job in the hospitality industry, working at the Royal York Hotel with Fairmont Hotels. Just did some standard kind of stuff there, workstation administration, email administration, all that kind of day-to-day stuff. From there, I moved over to the corporate office for Fairmont, slowly worked my way up through the ranks there. Made myself sort of the lead in the help desk, and then switched over to data center administration. That was all kinds of, that was everything from email, Blackberries, backups, you name it. Kind of lost my taste for hospitality at that point, and I went over to SunGuard Availability Services, did disaster recovery there, and there it was everything. I did networking, I did workstation administration, server setups, like anything and everything to do with IT I did over there. From there, I got headhunted by a former friend who worked at Fairmont. They brought me into Delta, and this is where the whole sort of journey of Google came along. They said, my old boss from Fairmont said, Delta's breaking off, and we're looking to make IT cheap. We're looking to make it easy, and we're looking to do it with as few people as possible. So we're looking at Google, and they really thought that I would be sort of the perfect fit for that. I feel that they weren't wrong. Fast forward 6 years, and I'm still doing it, still loving it, and I've actually switched to a different company doing it now. So I'm now with Cadillac Fairview. They switched to Google Apps about 3 years ago. And they just brought me in only a few months ago. So the presentation I'm making is sort of a little bit of what I learned from Delta and what I'm planning for Cadillac Fairview. So yeah, moving on. So we'll jump right into it if I can figure out how to use this slides program. So the thing with Google Apps is, as I said earlier, it's a different beast. It's not just email, and it's not just a copy of Microsoft Office. It's somewhere in the middle of crossing both of those together, and then of course, with current buzzwords, sticking everything up in the cloud. In order to get people on board with Google, because it's so different, you really have to focus on two different things, in my opinion. One of them is, of course, educating your users. That goes without saying for any kind of training that you have to do. But the idea behind it is a little bit further from traditional CBT training, where you're just sticking them in front of a bunch of slides and saying, click here, push this, enter this information, hit next, and you're done. The way I like to approach training with Google Apps in particular, I've had a lot of success with this, is making sure that people understand what it is they're doing. An example is when I was doing training, when I first started with Google, implementing Google Apps at Delta Hotels, I had to actually do sort of a 6-month road trip around Canada. So we had, there was 40 hotels. I think I hit about 20 of them in 6 months. There was another individual who did the other 20. And we did 3 sessions a day for 2 days of the week, about an hour and a half for each session. And really most of that was actually just covering email. We touched on calendar, we touched on contacts, but the big focus was on email. And the reason we kind of focused on that was that's where a lot of people spend their time. But what the training wasn't was I wasn't showing people necessarily this is how you create a label. I was showing them this is what labels can do. One example was I had an individual come into a class, and the way the classroom was set up, they didn't see me sitting at the front of the room, so they came in and they were screaming and hollering, and they were pretty upset about having to switch from Outlook to Google Apps. And by the end of it, after the hour and a half, that specific individual literally ran from the room, and they were trying to set up. They had this amazing idea for how to set up labels. Because I'd showed them that labels wasn't folders, and there's a difference there. And once they understood it, once they understood how Google actually stored the mail, they they started to see things differently. They figured out a better way to actually store all of their email and how to find it later. Just whoops, sorry, jumping slides by accident there. So just to sort of sum up what I'm trying to say there is you don't teach people. It's the old cliche of teach a man to fish versus teaching him. Sorry, I'm just I haven't had my coffee yet today. So anyway, back to that. It's the cliche of teaching a man to fish. If you show them what they want to do, what Google's capable of, they're going to be able to do a heck of a lot more with it than they are if you just show them how to create a label and how to put an email in it. The second half of the basis for training, or at least the basis that I see it for training people effectively on Google Apps, is empowering your users. And the definition of empowering is giving someone the authority or power to do something. One of the most common things I say when dealing with users in Google is these are things you can do yourself. You don't have to wait for us. That way, you don't have to wait for IT. In the past, we've had people say, you know, we need a project folder set up. There's these 3 people. We want to work together. Well, you don't have to wait for us anymore. You can go ahead and go into Google Drive and do that yourself. We want a shared calendar between our department. Well, you know what? You don't have to wait for us to set that up. You can go ahead and do that yourself. And that's it's a twofold approach. I mean, it saves us some work, but it makes the users happy. They get things done faster, and they feel that they have a little bit more control over how they're actually performing their day-to-day duties. They're not, their hands aren't tied down by IT, and that's kind of the idea behind empowering it. It's not just it combines with education, because you have to teach them the things that they are capable of doing, all the new powers and all the new responsibilities and all the new extras and whatnot that they actually have when they're using Google. All right, on to the next slide. So the approach that I'm taking at Cadillac Fairview, and this is something I learned when I was at Delta, was it's the approach. It's kind of after 5 years at Delta Hotels. I mean, it was new when we were there, and we were trying to figure out the best way to approach this. And we really had to throw stuff against the wall and see what kind of sticks. And after 5 years, by the end of it, we kind of had a little bit of a refined process to how we wanted to, how we approached training with, from day 1 of an employee, actually even day 0 or day minus 14, the way we had it set up, all the way to you know, offboarding and how we handled the whole thing. So really what we did was so we started at, as I said, we started at sort of day minus 14. We had put together a package of videos, and this wasn't just Google Apps, this was everything. So we had put together a package, so when a user was hired, we actually set them up, and we created their account before their first day. They would actually log in, and they ran through a series of just short videos. And one of the things that I'll probably touch on a lot here is the length of your training. I found that things are just easier to consume in bite-sized chunks. So with the onboarding training, it was a series of videos, never more than 5. At the worst, we had a 10-minute video, but we tried to keep it under 5 minutes for each video. And we probably had about an hour's worth of content, but it was because the videos were short. People were able to consume it. They could do it in easier paces. So really, the first tier of our training is really catching them, you know, as soon as they get here. And the way that we do it at Cadillac Fairview is we actually have, just recently revamped, the Human Resources Department has recently revamped their training approach. So what they have is job roles, and within the job roles we have all of the training that role requires. So I'm working with them currently to actually get all of the Google Apps training injected in there, so that you know, as part of being an admin assistant, here's the training that we feel is relevant. You know, labels, shared calendars, delegated mailboxes, et cetera, et cetera. So really, I'm working with them on recertification, you know, a year later, all that kind of stuff. We're tying it into, it's part of the efficiency training that we bring to you. It's not just, you know, how to how to exit the building when there's a fire, and your typical harassment training. But we're trying to bring that training to the next level, and that's something that HR was working on as well, is something I'd like to see along with Google Apps. So taking to the next level, again, with those work tracks, those training tracks that HR is creating, we're just sort of elaborating on that first tier. So when you first get in, you see a bunch of videos that show you some of the basics of Google. The next level is really taking it a step further. It's not just how to store your mail and how to file it and how labels work, but we're taking it to how to use the advanced search and dealing with external companies when sharing documents and stuff like that, and best practices, best approaches, and stuff like that. Some of the other stuff that we do on this next level is webinars and drop-ins. So I'm currently in the process, and I found that this really works well, is the lunch and learns approach, the webinars, and the biggest one is sort of the office hours or the drop-ins. But we try to do those monthly, either a lunch and learn or a Q&A session, or even just a virtual hangout or something of the sort, just to give users sort of a venue to ask those open-ended questions, and we try to let people know that it's not just where you come and you say, oh, I don't know how to do this, how do I do it? We want people to come down and say, I think there's a better way to do this. What do you think? And that's sort of leads me into the next point here, is the efficiency interviews. I didn't know what else to call them. Well, what I ended up doing, and I did a lot of these at Delta, and I plan on doing a significant amount of them at Cadillac Fairview, is sitting down with the departments or small teams or sub-teams or even just an individual and just talking to them, figuring out what it is that they normally do, and finding where you can actually improve on that, where Google Apps specifically has some features and some functions that will actually make it more efficient and easier for everyone. And I could go on with examples of things that we did at Delta and some of the stuff that I've even started doing here at Cadillac Fairview, on where we actually shortened the time span of some business processes and made things a little bit more reliable. Really, you need to get into the weeds at sort of this point, and this goes a little bit beyond training. This is kind of your job function as a Google Apps administrator, in my opinion. And then the last thing is rewarding featured users. One of the things that people learn well from their peers. I mean, you can always ask an IT administrator how to do something, but whenever an IT administrator answers, and it's to no fault of the IT administrator, the user tends to feel like they've been, so to speak, put in their place, right? The only reason that the IT administrator knew the answer was because they're that IT nerd. But if it's your peers that are actually teaching you how to do things or showing you some of the neat features that show up inside Google, there's a huge benefit there. People tend to listen more. So one of the things that we do, and there's a point a little further on about covering this kind of idea, but doing some featured stories. I mean, every company has sort of a newsletter or an intranet or something like that, but point out what people's peers are doing and how they're, and have them sort of work with the other people, which is sort of the next kind of column in our three-tiered approach, is the train the trainer, or our Google evangelists. Really, this is your super users. And one thing I want to stress is if you're taking it to this level where you have departmental or regional, depending on how your business is set up, if you have you want to have experts within there. And these aren't IT people. You don't want them to be IT people. You want them to be people who work within the department or within the region, and they're excited about Google. You don't want people voluntold that they have to do this, because the excitement's just not there. And it's if you don't have the excitement, you're not going to sell it. And if you're not going to sell it, no one's going to use it. So again, the train the trainer, this is where we leverage these experts to sort of do some of the drop-ins and the webinars, get them to train a session now and then, get them to answer the questions and field some of the questions from those people. These are the people who will make Google Apps a success in your business. you want to make sure that you want to treat them well. You want to make sure that when a new feature comes out in Google, test it with them first, run it by them, get their feedback, and take that stuff to Google. And anything that anything that comes out of the roadmap session, they're not called roadmap sessions anymore. But anything that comes out of the product strategy sessions from Google, take them to these people, let them know, let them get excited about it. That's, in a nutshell, that's really our training approach, or at least the approach I'm planning to take with Google. Like I said, I'm still in the early phases. I'm working it out. One of the big things that makes this success, or any training of Google Apps or any adoption, is finding a business sponsor. And the best business sponsor you can find is human resources. I mean, generally speaking, in most businesses, they are responsible for the learning management of the company anyways. So it's best to get aligned with them and make sure that they're behind it. Before I even started at Cadillac Fairview, the HR team had already jumped on as the sponsors for this. And then it kind of sat stagnant for a little bit. But now I'm here. That's what they brought me in for, and we're going to make this a success. So how to make it a success, beyond just training of your users, beyond just showing them where to click and how to click and what to click on, you need to evangelize, and I've used that word already. The problem with that is when you have a big company, everybody consumes information differently. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, I pull out Feedly and I go through a bunch of different feeds there, and that's how I get my news. My wife, she reads newspapers, she gets emails, she has a 10 different tabs on her browser that she goes through, and that's how she gets her news. And there's other people who everything comes in an email. Everybody consumes it differently, and even every company, they communicate differently, and they try, if they're good at it, they try to cover all their bases to make sure that they're reaching every user. So the first thing you want to do, sort of one approach to it, or reaching your users, is spreading the word. And however or whatever you can do to spread the good word of Google, spread the gospel of Google, take advantage of it. One thing I can't tell you to do enough is leverage your marketing department. When it comes to evangelizing a product, that's what your marketing team is for. And in your own business, your marketing team, generally speaking, it's like-minded. The people who work in the marketing team for a department are there because they're the mindset, they're the culture that company has cultivated. So how they think marketing applies and what the best practices are for marketing, generally speaking, they align with your company, so or your business. So take advantage of their knowledge, buy them lunch, take them out, figure out what they think the best way to sort of push this stuff out is. Lunch and learns, if you can get your department to fund them, people will always show up for a free lunch, and make sure it's a good sales pitch when they get there. I mentioned this earlier, recognize and reward. Peer-to-peer learning is you can't put a price on it. If one user's showing another user how to do something, they will listen. They always do. Promote features, users, and use cases. Again, if you're sending out a newsletter, you have an intranet, try and get a spot on there. Once a month, feature a user and how they've used Google Apps to really increase efficiency in what they do. I have written here, bribe them, and I mean exactly that. We have an employee recognition program here at Cadillac Fairview, and one of the things that I'm working with on HR is when we feature those users, we give them some of the recognition dollars. When you show up to the lunch and learns, or you show up to the training sessions, or we do contests. You show up to the lunch and learn, we'll do a random draw, and you get some rewards. People love free stuff, and you know what? Take advantage of that. If you can get them there with free stuff, you've got their ear, and you can show them. Like the biggest thing with Google Apps is that a lot of people don't know what it can do, and without knowing what it can do, they're just going to assume that it did the same as everything else. And as a Google Apps administrator, I'm sure you can recognize that Google Apps has a lot more to offer than just Outlook and Microsoft Office. It ties it together. It's all-time availability. It's a better product. There's just so much more meat to it than there is just an Office suite. Um, Another tip I can give you for reaching your users is make it easy. If they have to dig 12 links deep through the company intranet to find the training video for how to label an email, they're not going to do it. Make it as easy as possible. One of the things that and this is, I found this immensely useful, and I'm sure if anyone from Delta is listening, they're going to be mad. But when I was at Delta, anytime anyone asked me a question, I would respond with a 2-minute video. I threw up. I was using Jing at the time, but now that I'm on Windows, I'm using screencast.com or something. I can't remember. I'm not endorsing any products here, but basically, I just threw up a little thing. I did a quick little screencast, 2 minutes long, with my voice in the background, just kind of saying, click here, do this, do that, do that. And I'd send them that video. And I'd also save that in Google Drive. And as time went on, I had more and more and more and more videos of these little 2-minute, quick answers. And it made it super simple. Whenever anyone asked a question, I just fired that back. I'm doing the same thing here at Cadillac Fairview. When I left Delta, I took all those videos with me. Unfortunately, I don't think I can reuse them. They have the Delta logo in the corner, but I'm doing the same thing here at Cadillac Fairview. I'm slowly recording these videos. We actually have a proper knowledge base here for our help desk to use, so I'm chucking those up in there. And it makes it much quicker to get things done. And at the same time, here's the best part: it's advertising what Google can do. I mean, they didn't have to download a video, they didn't have to go to YouTube, but they've got a little quick video, and it's in their environment, and it shows them what they're doing. Webinars and Hangouts, you have to connect with your users. It just comes down to that. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. Regular Q&A drop-in sessions, same thing. You have to connect with the users in order for Google Apps to be a success. It's new, and I mean, I think I cover this in one of the slides here somewhere. You have a generation gap. You have the users who've been using Outlook or Outlook Express or MHS Mail or Lotus Notes, and they work a certain way. They've been using it for, I mean, geez, I used email for like 20 years, and then Gmail comes along. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration there, but I mean, I did email a certain way, and when Gmail came out, it was something altogether new. I mean, like, labels are not the same as folders. The all mail is a unique way of storing things, and archiving is not getting it off the server. It's just getting it out of your way. It was a whole new way of doing things. So the older generation, I'm not trying to insult anyone here, but there's people who've been doing things a certain way for a long time, and it's what they're used to doing, and people are afraid of change. You have the younger generation, on the other hand, who are coming in, and they don't understand how the older generation is doing things. They don't understand why that makes sense, and so they're embracing Google, but they're having a hard time. They're hitting a wall when you have a younger generation trying to work with an older generation. I'm going to start this slide by saying I'm not endorsing myself, or Cadillac Fairview are not endorsing any products here. These are just two products that I have worked with in the past, and I think they are both phenomenal. Synergize, this is just a little blurb straight from their webpage. Synergize is actually a company put together. If you're in Google Apps and you don't know Synergize, you need to check it out right away. It is a company put together by some ex-Googlers. The idea is, again, the simple, short, bite-sized videos, no more than 3 minutes of video, and it is, for the most part, not every piece, but for the most part, it is fully interactive. If you want to learn how to interact with your email, it walks you through on top of your own Gmail. So you launch the video and it says, okay, click here to click the compose button to start a new email. So, and it pauses the video and waits for you to click on the compose button, and then it carries on from there. Excellent product. It integrates directly inside the Gmail interface. You get a nice little training icon at the top that you can sort of click on, and it has tons and tons and tons of content. Really good guys. Really great product. Boost eLearning is a little bit more traditional CBT product. If that's what your users are into, it is phenomenal. It's categorized. I think the last time I looked at it, they had sort of a tiered structure. They had sort of a basics, and then they had sort of a power users package, and they were priced separately. Very, very good product. I recommend that one as well. Again, if you're into the traditional CBT kind of idea, that's definitely the way to go. There's a multitude of other products out there, but these are just two that save you the work of putting together the training. They allow you to sort of sit back and let someone else sort of take the reins. One thing you'll find with training Google is it is an uphill battle training your users because of Google's rolling innovation and constantly changing this and that and these tiny little things. You're gonna find that you're redoing your videos a lot, and these guys they stay on top of it, and it makes your life a lot easier. Lastly, in order for you to provide quality training and quality information to your end users, you really need to be in the loop with Google. And as I just said, with the rolling innovation, this is if you thought staying on top of technology in the past was time consuming, staying on top of what Google can do or Google is doing and what they have coming up can be tenfold that old experience. It is constantly changing, and it's good. It's a good thing, because if you do the waterfall technique for deploying new features, Google would be hated, because they change so many tiny little things. But when they're changing one thing this week and something small next week and then something else small next week, at the end of a quarter, they've fundamentally changed a product. But everyone was able to sort of consume that without really freaking out, for lack of a better way to put it. These are just a few of the places that I hit on a regular basis. Google Connect for Work I have found to be vital to my day-to-day. It's if you're not on there, get on there. It's just Google Apps administrators. They all hop on there and we all chat and support each other and whatnot. Fantastic. Plus, Google uses it now for announcing what's coming up and feature releases and stuff like that. Very interactive community and very active community. Google Meetups. Again, these are also organized through the Google Connect for Work. Google Meetups are a great place. It's administrators get together and share things. Up here in Canada, not as many as I'd like to see. But down in the States, they are phenomenal. They're all over the place, and there's a lot of admins show up to them. What's new in Google Apps? It is a website that Google provides, just kind of keeps administrators in the loop on what's coming up. Google Plus Communities. I didn't outline any in particular, but I find that those who are adamant about Google tend to lean towards Google's social network, which is, of course, Google Plus. So dig through the communities, and you'll find some good stuff in there. And of course, your vendor. You got to buy your Google Apps licenses through somebody, and I would assume that those vendors would be in the know of what's going on with Google and would keep you informed. I think that is pretty much the presentation I had. So at this point, I guess I'm just going to ask Dylan to join back in here, and I'll take on any questions.
Hey, thanks, Andy. Just before we jump into the questions, I just wanted to say I put up the form for the free swag boxes that we're giving out. So if you are interested in winning free stuff, which I imagine most of you are, fill out that form that should now be showing in your Showcase app. So now let's dive into a few of the questions. So here's a good one from Howard Thompson. What are the predominant difficulties people incur trying to learn how to use Google Apps?
I think it depends on your culture. I'm going to start with that. I mean, when although there is some overlap, Google's different. It really is. It's not Outlook. If you're using Outlook with Google as the back end, you shouldn't really have much trouble. But it's new. It's different. Is really it. I think one of the biggest complaints or questions that I get when new users are coming in, or an old user is trying to learn Google, is how do I sort? And this is just kind of I'm just sort of trying to paint you a picture here. They always ask you, how do I sort? And I just said, and I'll take a couple minutes, not even a couple minutes, but just to explain that, I mean, Google's a search company. Well, they're an advertising company, but they do that through search. Um, but sort is, I mean, when you're using sort, you're essentially doing work the computer can do for you, which is now what Google does. So you used to click on the date column and it would sort all your emails, and you'd scroll to 3 weeks ago, and then you'd go through that chunk of emails to find the one from Bob, which is the one you're looking for. When in Google, you can just type in from Bob and then a date, right? And it'll surface that email. So it's just, it's a cultural shift, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The biggest pushback you'll get is people are used to doing something a certain way, and Google just doesn't do that. And it's not that Google's a bad product. They're going to say it is because they can't do it that way. You have to show them that changing the way that they do something can increase their efficiency, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
All right, great answer. So the next question we have is from Maureen Roden. So what Maureen wants to know is, how do you get some of those late majority or people who are lagging on the curve to adopt, and how do you sort of figure out what it is that they already know about Google Apps? Sometimes it's hard to assess their knowledge at that point, some of the later adopters, whereas the early adopters, I think it's more easy to size up what they already know.
I think I understand the question is how do we sort of give those late adopters that extra push to get them on board? Um, I've been blessed with brutal honesty. So what I'm going to tell you is I fully support public shaming and peer pressure. So if you have some people who are falling behind, you can start by sitting down with them, figuring out where their what's the word I'm looking for, where their concerns are, what it is that's holding them back from sort of adopting, what it is that they think is problematic, or why it is that they don't want to jump on board, and you'll get every answer under the sun. You'll get stuff from I just don't have time to well, that's not the way that I do things. To you'll get the flat out just anger. You'll get people saying this is stupid and I don't understand why we have to do this. Once you get to the late adopter, I mean, if you have a majority adopted and then you just have a sort of a handful or a smattering of people, that's where the handholding comes in. Unfortunately, switching from when you're adopting Google Apps, if you're going full Google Apps suite, all the products, and not trying to sugarcoat it, not trying to baby it with Outlook in front of Google Apps. In case you haven't caught that from me, I think that putting third-party applications in front of Google Apps, any fat clients, I think you're hindering what you can do with Google Apps. In order to get the full benefit of Google Apps, you need the full experience of Google Apps. So, and I'm getting off track now. You have to baby them. You have to sit down and sort of address them individually. And if you can do it, if you can save yourself some time on it, by all means. I mean, if it's a department that's lagging, sit down with the department, buy them lunch, find out what their problems are. And I mean, not every department's going to be able to jump on board. I mean, finance is probably the last department that you're ever going to get to jump on to using Google spreadsheets. It's just, and it's not even the people. It's just the way that technology evolved for them. So that's really it. I wish I had a better answer for you, an easier answer, but yeah, you gotta do some hand holding.
All right, that sort of leads into our next question, actually. So we have a question from Allison Davis. This was a bit covered in the presentation, but I think we could always go a little bit more in depth. So who should be providing the ongoing training? She was saying at her organization it's sort of fallen onto the IT department, who hasn't been great at maintaining this approach. So you talked about evangelizing and sort of getting these non-IT people to be these early adopters and train people. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, I mean, the reason I'm smiling at that one is every company kind of faces this. If you're lucky enough to have a big company that has an IT training department, I mean, you have a clear-cut answer. If you're a small company who HR is one person and IT is, one person, um, I would I would invest in I would spend the money and invest in one of the training providers like Synergize or Boost. Um, if you're somewhere in the middle, which is both companies that I've worked for with Google Apps, that's the bucket we were in. Um, it fell onto IT. It really did. Uh, we tried to pair up with human resources just because they were the training provider. We were the content provider for the training is I guess how we kind of looked at it. We had at Delta, we actually had trained up some of the some of the human resources people to do the training for us. Um, Whereas at Cadillac Fairview, they're more than happy to facilitate a place, and they're happy to market the training, but we're the ones who kind of have to provide it. Um, what I'm doing is I'm pushing back a little bit on human resources to help drive some of the focus of the training. I mean, I can show you how to label an email, but it's a question of why you need to label that email and what the best method for creating that label. That's not something I should teach you. As far as IT training goes, I should be teaching you how to do something or how to better use Google Apps. But if there's a question of um, the business process and creating an efficiency there, that's not IT's responsibility. That should fall back onto, and I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but human resources should be offering up some kind of training surrounding, efficiency in your business and better business practices and all that kind of working smart and all that kind of stuff. I hope that answered the question.
Great. And before we get into any more questions, I just wanted to mention a few of you guys are asking about getting links from the slide deck or getting the entire slide deck. If you fill out that form that I told you guys to enter for winning the free swag box, that'll also automatically send you the entire slide deck from this presentation. So if you want to review the presentation again, you can fill out that form and you'll have access to the slide deck, for those of you guys wondering. So our next question is, how do you promote self-efficiency or self-efficacy? We want our users to find answers and address learning needs independently, so rather than have someone training them, how can we motivate users to take this step? That's definitely something I think a lot of people struggle with.
Your evangelists are gonna help you with that. Um, I think that's pretty much the entirety of the answer. In order for You have to have a culture that kind of feeds off of that. If your users traditionally don't go to product experts or anything like that, you're going to be hard up to sort of send them to a message forum and have them post the questions there. Um, if that's the way you want to go, then you have to you're going to have to drive a culture shift, really. But if you can introduce to lead that culture shift, you need your evangelists or your product experts or whatever it is you want to call them. If you start there, then you're starting off on the right foot. And I guess to leverage that, one tactic that you can use to sort of push that is they can ask the question to the help desk, but make sure that it's your evangelist that provides the answer. So it may come in, and then it'll come into the help desk sends it to me, and then I'll reach out to my evangelist and say, hey, there's a person in your area that's asking about this. Can you talk to them? And if you still have a problem, then come back to me. You do that a few times and people will get used to going to that individual, and then from there you can start growing a little bit more into users sort of answering their own questions amongst each other. I mean, it's a big jump to get every user answering every other user, but if you can start with your evangelists, you're on the right path.
Just to add to that, the Guru site as well as our newsletter provides lots of quick video tips that would answer a lot of questions that new users to Google Apps often have, all the way up to advanced users. So, I'd really promote the Guru to your users and have them take a look at some of those videos and some of those articles because it can answer a lot of questions before they ever make it to your help desk.
I got to apologize, Dylan. I didn't even think to add that to my slide on where to get information. I should have.
It's all right. Then here's our last question we have. Any tips for technophobes to relax and take that first step? So people who are sort of weary of new technologies and aren't just sort of slow adopters, but actually maybe have some resistance to it. What are some of the sort of techniques you take to make them cross that line?
It's taking your time. Those people, I mean, and that's not a problem that's specific to Google Apps. Those are the people that you're going to have to spend a little bit of extra time with, and those are the people that I would really go the extra mile to explain to them what they're doing, not how to do something. Explain to them what they're doing. And I'm gonna I think I got time. I'll explain. This is one of the examples that I've used hundreds and hundreds of times now in explaining labels, and I have a hard time trying to explain how you should teach someone about Google Apps. With labels in Google Mail, it's fundamentally different than folders. You have an all mail folder, which every single piece of mail sent and received shows up in all mail, and then when you add a label, what you're doing is you're sort of sticking a post-it note on it to say this is a little tag to make it easier to find later. When you hit archive, actually all it's doing is removing the inbox label. So the inbox itself is actually just a label, right? That usually turns into a 5-minute explanation, but you can see the difference between if you want to put it in a folder, just stick this label on it, versus we have an all mail folder where all the mail is, and then we add this label, it does this, and when we click on the label later, it goes into the all mail folder. And so the technophobes, they're usually scared because they've done something a certain way their whole life, and they don't want to change because now they got to learn something new. But if you teach them how to do something or why they're doing it, it becomes a little less scary. It's sort of like looking under the sheet of you see a ghost on Halloween, you look under the sheet, it's a little less scary because there's just a kid under there who's trick-or-treating, kind of idea. If they know what they're doing, it's not as terrifying. So
yeah, I liked your example of sort of explaining the physical, non-technological description of what it is, referring to a label as a sticky note or something that they could maybe see around the office on a day-to-day. I think there's one more question I liked that will be a really quick one.
Sure.
Andy, do you have an elevator pitch for people new to Google Apps? So a 30-second, just why they should be using Google Apps.
I guess basically, whenever I try to explain Google Apps to people, I mean it's above and beyond what Microsoft Office is. Simply put, because you've got all the different pieces of getting everything that you do in one place. It's not just your email. That email address is also linked to Google Groups, which are your distribution lists, but those distribution lists are also used to share Google Docs. And all the people that are in the distribution list who are sharing a Google Doc can all work on the Google Doc at the same time without stepping on each other's feet. It's that's it in a nutshell. It's not an office suite and a mail platform and a contacts book. It's a collaboration suite. It's a grouping of different products put together to make everything tie together to make it just to make you work more efficiently is really it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. So I just wanted to make a note to everyone that our next presentation is in about 2 hours. So that'll be 3 p.m. for those of you on the East Coast. And it is presented by Virtru and is on securing your org, as well as a case study on email encryption. And this will be one of our featured sessions, so attendees will have the opportunity to win a free Chromebook Pixel. And just a reminder also to everyone in this session to fill out that form so you can get the slide deck as well as being entered to win the swag box, which includes t-shirts and things like that. Thanks again, Andy. This was a great presentation, and I hope everyone learned something today. So,
Okay. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, everyone,
thank you
for
guys.
watching.
See you at the next session.